Hi, welcome to the Mentally Healthy Workplaces Asia podcast. My name is Wen Lee Lim, and I'm the Chief Impact Officer at FlourishDX and host of this podcast. So the purpose of this is to really have conversations and practical guidance from experts, service providers, innovative tech platforms, and employers in the region. We believe in taking a shared responsibility approach to workplace mental health. And so it's not just as individuals, but as colleagues, employers, and the broader community to really help create mentally healthy workplaces so we can prevent suffering and promote human flourishing. So today we have a friend of mine, Marianne Hughes, based out in Hong Kong, joining us, the CEO and founder of Kno Global. Welcome, Marianne.
Hi, good to be here.
So good to have you. And okay, I know for the listeners, you can't see the screen, but we have an additional guest. Can you introduce him?
Yeah, this is a new little cat I got yesterday called Mio. So he kind of wants to stay here at the moment. We'll see.
Yeah, no problems at all. And he's a ragdoll, so I know for cat lovers out there, I know people really, really love that breed of cats. And you picked him up last night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's his first kind of morning at home, and yeah, very cute. So
Oh, well, he's welcome to join us. As we're, the next 45 minutes, we're just going to explore what your company does, your journey on how you started this. So just as a preamble, I met Marianne probably like 6 months, 8 months ago. We're in a book club together. And I, having worked in the social impact space, I found that what she was doing was just amazing. And actually, I realized that what she's doing is actually creating a better workplace for a lot of people. So when we think of workplaces, we think of, desk-bound jobs, office workers, like a lot of us listening to the podcast. But what Marianne does is actually for an unseen and a huge population of people who are in factories. So without giving it away, Marianne, just kind of tell us your journey and how you got about to founding Kno Global.
yeah, sure. Yeah, we're so glad to be here. And my story is originally I started out as a regular shopper on the high street, in the UK. And around 8 years ago, a factory collapsed in Bangladesh, which maybe a lot of you have heard about. Over 1,000 workers died, and the world's biggest brands had to pay out millions of dollars for this one event. So at the time, I was just shopping in London and wondering, how can this happen, and what can we really do about it? So I started kind of researching, started a blog, and really went out and interviewed people on the high street to see if they felt the same or not, and interviewed experts in the field, people working within these big fashion brands as well. But I still kind of didn't find the right answers, even though I accidentally ended up becoming a journalist and writing for some big kind of media outlets and unexpectedly kind of, I guess, coming up with some new insights in this field. I then went out to China and actually worked in a factory on the line and made over 2,000 trials a day with the workers to really try and understand more about their perspective on the challenge of sharing how they feel and what's really going on in their workplace. So that's where I think me and you really linked on, what is a mentally healthy workplace? And for me, it really goes back to the factory environments that have actually inspired many of the ways that I think people in the US work today, in particular, like from the Ford manufacturing days to how the banks are now operating. And I think if we can really adapt how we think about the people who made our clothes and our products, how are they working and what are their workplaces like? Shouldn't that also inspire us too with what we do as well? So, yeah, now we're working with some big global brands on their supply chains across China, India, and Vietnam. Um, yeah, and our vision is to humanize the supply chain. Tell you a bit more about that later.
Yeah. I love that, we read so many times in the press and the paper of things that, are happening around the world, but just kind of really crazy and cool that you went out there and really had a passion for really, trying to figure this out and do your part. So maybe, can you just tell us what the experience was like for you working on the factory floor?
Mm. Yeah, it was really like I did that because I felt like it was the only way for me to really get the workers to trust me and to try and understand them because I was always going in as a Westerner, right? And so they weren't really like, trusting me or telling me what was really going on. But when I actually sat with them, they were like, wow, okay, this person is really trying to make an effort to see things from our point of view. But so I think that's when they opened up. And so a big part of my experience there was hearing their true honest thoughts and just getting to hang out with their families and going for dinners where I'd meet like their kids and their brothers and sisters, and really understand the context of their life that they were living in, and just realizing that it's very similar to me and you. I really don't think there's much difference between us and any kind of human, actually. And I think it's just really about recognizing that human potential, even if it's on the factory line, can really awaken so many more possibilities, and just appreciating the community around them and the depth of their experiences on and off the factory line really helped me see the need for community as the core, fundamental of what we do is building community in the factory between the workers and the managers. And that's through that experience I had where I had to create community with them in order to get their trust and really find out what they were thinking.
Yeah. And how long did you spend out on the factory floor? I mean, like, how long were you working there?
Well, I actually lived in China for 2 years on the ground, like developing this, doing all the R&D. So I probably visited around 100 factories. And some of them I was there for like a couple of months at a time, and some of them I was there for like shorter amounts of time. So yeah, I traveled around like North and South China and visited a lot of different factories and spent a lot of time in between on the line. Yeah.
Man, that is super interesting. I'm sure, I mean, how was the language and the cultural barrier?
Yeah, well, a bit about my story as well is that I came originally to Hong Kong University as an exchange student to study Mandarin for 1 year. Um, and so I kind of had that background, which is really useful to actually be able to go on the line and at least have some confidence starting up a conversation. But definitely, like living in China was like part of like really getting more fluent, and yeah, just really trying to connect with people not only through language but just through like gestures of kindness, and getting to really show that I really wanted to know people, aside from just wanting to get things out of them, like also trying to give them things back through the research that I was doing.
Mm. So that, I'm assuming, birthed Kno Global. So can you share with us, how you started that, and what does it do?
Yeah, so our vision is to humanize the supply chain, and we basically go into factories, build communities, and then we also launch our app, and we have a data platform as well. So through the app, workers can actually log in and they can share what's going on in their week. So every week there's a new topic for them to learn about and also share about. And we cover all of the kind of compliance topics that the big retail brands want to make sure are covered, such as child labor, forced labor, minimum wage. And then we also take workers on a journey where they start, basic level needs, and then their higher level needs for like finding purpose, finding motivation at work. So the idea is it's an ongoing continuous improvement metric, and really helping the factories understand, that we're not expecting every workplace to be perfect, but it's about, continuous improvement and trying to really hear the workers and address those challenges to reduce the risk of them becoming big scandals as well.
Mm. So they're really looking at this from a risk perspective, which I thought was really similar in terms of what Flourish DX does and what you do, but for a very, a different population. So how have you found in terms of, when you pitch to employers or potential clients, how are those conversations, and how's their receptiveness in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've definitely seen like so much evolution in this space since like, 8 years ago when I started, and it was so hard to even have these conversations. Whereas now, like I definitely say in this year in particular, things have just exploded. Like so many brands want to get into ESG data and social data tracking. So that's a really big angle for us on the brand side. But we kind of have two customers. So one is the brand and the other one is the factory. So we also sell direct to factories. And I think what's making them buy in is also the fact that they can get more sales from this, kind of like an ethical Alibaba. So it's a point for them to differentiate between the other factories in the market by saying, we're ethical and sustainable, and here's the verification behind it. So I think it's really about, my original idea, taking this beyond greenwashing idea of like, ethical, sustainable brands towards more like verifiable data behind it, and how we really track and analyze that.
Yeah. And another big stakeholder will be the users. How have those conversations been in terms of potentially trust? They're like, oh, okay, what are you going to do with this? Am I going to be singled out? And I'm guessing that that's where some of the thoughts would go. So how has that been?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you understand as well. There's kind of like this cultural mind shift change that needs to go on whilst we're introducing the program, so that workers really understand, this isn't about finding problems or you're not going to get punished for using this, and really trying to let them know some authentic stories of what other workers have done through the platform is kind of how we start. So trying to really build their trust by saying, you know, these are real examples of people who've been using the platform, they've got from it. Sorry, the cat is up to mischief. And then we try to really understand the unique needs of the workers at that factory, and then very quickly try and highlight some feedback that we're getting to encourage all of the workers to participate. But by default, everything is kind of anonymized, so the workers kind of feel safer in that context as well.
Yeah. And on your website as well, I think you had some testimonials of, workers using it. Maybe do you have like an example? I mean, you don't have to name names, but just of a positive case study that's come out of your clients using Kno Global.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I wonder if I've got a recent one that we could share. I mean, I guess in the case of India, actually, so we launched there in February, March this year, when it was like the peak of the worst COVID wave, and it was like rated as like the worst country in the world for COVID. And so we launched, and over 90% of workers didn't even have a smartphone. And we were like, okay, how is this going to go? And I had no idea, to be honest. But then we launched it, and we managed to create this kind of tablet solution. And one of the things, the really incredible story that came out of that is that one worker shared through the platform that they couldn't afford healthcare for a close family member. And one of the managers actually volunteered to help create a fund to kind of support just to get that healthcare covered and the cost paid for through the platform. So that was one really kind of, I guess, highlight example of how they really came together as a community on the platform and heard about this workers' concerns, which maybe they wouldn't have shared before. And I think that made them kind of feel more connected during what was a really tough time where loads of people had close relatives or even colleagues, you know, passing away, sadly, due to COVID. And this was a time more than ever where I think we see the real need for mentally healthy workplaces. And you can't ignore the human aspects where there's this kind of external conditions going on, right? So why do we ignore them anyway, even if COVID isn't happening? So I think it actually accelerated demand for us. And we even had, you know, very rural, uneducated, you know, workers coming forward saying, you know, COVID has helped me learn how to be more mentally strong. And those are other kind of stories that we've had as well.
Wow, super interesting. Do you mind explaining like kind of like step by step in a way, like how does your platform foster this communication? And so what do the workers kind of do on there? But the fact that it's actually bridged a gap between even in a very hierarchical society, as you would know in Asia, it's like, you know, you have like basically, you know, your managers and then upper management and all that, where the power distance is actually quite high. So I'm guessing that's what your platform does in terms of bringing people together and fostering, conversations or communication.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the differences or kind of challenges I face in Asia, which is definitely that there's more kind of this hierarchical culture. And but I've definitely noticed the differences between China and India as well sometimes. And but every single factory is unique, and as you know, every single workplace is unique, and you know all the structures are kind of different. And I think our platform kind of has to adapt to that and also respect those things as well. But I guess one thing we do is we actually try to empower the managers, and especially the kind of line managers or junior managers who perhaps haven't received much training about the softer skills such as communication or how to manage feedback from workers. So that's initially what is scaring them, unless we really try and help equip them with those skills of, okay, what to do if a worker does say some feedback and you don't know what to do about it, or you're kind of criticized perhaps. Like really helping them to already anticipate what they would do in those scenarios and equip them is something that we're trying to do through the platform so that managers kind of also really get a genuine benefit. And then yeah, part of how we do that is that we do have like experts sharing tips on the platform sometimes. For example, line managers who have previously gone through these challenges and what they did about it. So they can see like real human examples, and you know, the whole platform is very human from that aspect too.
Yeah. And so you started out in China and now
Mhm.
you're in India. And of course, you know, very different cultures. You know, when we say like, even for this podcast, mentally healthy workplaces, Asia is massive. And
Yeah.
every country, but even within the country, you know, the cultures are also very diverse. And so kind of what's next for, you know, the company and what's on the cards for the next couple of years?
It's a good question. So we've actually just launched in Vietnam as well a couple months ago, which is Yeah, super interesting. Like our first launch in Southeast Asia, which is definitely going to be like a big growth market for us because as supply chains shift, there's a big trend towards Southeast Asia. So, yeah, Vietnam is massively growing, but also going through similar challenges with COVID right now than India was earlier in the year. So, there's a lot of factory workers who are really reliant on their community at work to get through this time. Um, so, I think our plan is to really grow across that whole region. Our goal is to reach 10 million workers globally. So there's a lot to do, but we're definitely up for the challenge. So the team is kind of focusing right now on scalability and getting ready for that next part of the journey as well.
Mm. And like, when you go to every region, it is very different. So, I mean, what's kind of your process? And this is kind of maybe more of a startup question, but also like a human element in terms of studying and understanding that culture before launching there. Do you have any tips to share in terms of, because every company is trying to expand globally, but especially for you, where it's so human centric and it's about people's well-being, and linking that to mental health as well. How do you go about that?
Yes, good question. Don't know if you can hear that noise, by the way. Is that
As a
distracting?
cat? No, it's okay. Go ahead.
So what we try to do generally is because, yeah, we accept that every single workplace is unique, regardless of whether it's a different country or not. We genuinely go in and try to ask the workers and the managers what they think their needs are, both through the platform and also through the training, so they can actually help be a part of selecting initially what topics to focus on. So there are some topics which are definitely like we have to really adapt towards the local culture, and the way we talk about it is different. For example, like gender-based harassment is a topic that is really popular trend in our society today to talk about this topic, and also there's a lot of brands who want to address this within their supply chain. It's crazy that 80% of workers in the garment industry are female actually, and there's some shocking stats out there around Asia in this topic, and it's one area where we want to encourage people to speak, and typically they will not, speak about it. So that's just one example of how we try to adapt to local culture. So we've partnered with a local NGO in India called Swati, and they are helping us actually to build specifically India-based content on that topic. And that's an example where we don't pretend to know how to frame this topic in the local context, but by partnering up, we can really try and understand better and help to deliver better training and assess the impact of that training over time as well.
Yeah, I love that. With the hat of looking at social impact, it's so good when you hear organizations partnering up because yeah, we don't know it all. But the goal is actually to know where we don't know things and then partner up and work with the experts in the field because, yeah, it just delivers such better outcomes than to think that you can, dominate like, that area and then, you're afraid of letting people in. So really looking forward to actually seeing what comes out of that partnership and how that really meets the needs. What's Indonesia? I think we spoke a while ago on the cards as well in terms of expansion because that has a very big, factory kind of worker and a lot of garments come from there as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I personally love to get out there because I love surfing and would really love to go there. That's the last place I went before COVID kind of took off as well. So, yeah, I'd love to do factories in Indonesia. I think we're just trying not to do too much too soon because we're also
Mm,
still a startup. And yeah, we're trying to really focus on getting things right first in each, local geography. But hopefully Indonesia will be soon. But we're actually
yeah.
on the roadmap for Bangladesh next year. That'll be
Wow.
on. Mm.
Amazing. I'm just so glad, that yeah, like I said before, right at the start, that these workers, are really unseen. We wear all their products, it's interacts with us every day. But there's not many times that we actually have conversations or it's brought to the forefront about their working conditions and their workplaces. I'm really, really, I mean, I'm trying to like keep my excitement toned down, like and just be professional. But I'm really, really glad to have you on here and just to talk about this area because it's if we can all do our part as well to, buy ethically, and to look for these companies who are, using your software or even others, that is helping, create transparent supply chains and give voices to, the factory workers and improve their conditions. I mean, what an amazing world that would be. And in a way that, COVID has had a lot of negative outcomes, but if the fact that people, more companies are looking for you and engaging and the conversations are different, that's a really, a very hopeful future. So yeah, yeah. And so you said, yeah, the conversations have changed a lot. And I'm expecting that your thinking is going to kind of be even more on the rise.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's pushed and challenged us all over this time. And definitely for me, it's been really good actually just to have a lot of time to sit still and really focus on like the next stage of the business. And as the team grows around me as well, I mean, my big reflection actually over the past week has been that on one hand, we do have this really inspiring vision to go and impact millions of factory workers. But then again, what I'm really kind of, I think, need to be motivated by as well is the people who are sat next to me in the office. Are they also in a mentally healthy workplace? And if they're not, then it's kind of like not authentic for me to even be going out and telling the factories that they should be doing it, right? So I'm really trying to think about, as we onboard new team members, we've got someone else joining this week, like what are the practices that we can really put in place to ensure that we're demonstrating a good example of what a mentally healthy workplace looks like. And I think it actually is quite challenging, especially as a founder of a business as well, sometimes to really take care of your mental health. So yeah.
Yeah. And actually that leads me to the next question. And for the listeners, that is just Marianne's cat at the back discovering his environment. No, it's fine. It's actually really cute.
We're trying to do a mentally healthy workplace with the cats. So part of the company policy.
So on that, having been, I've been part of the startup space and just seeing the pressures of, everything from fundraising to trying to grow a team. And, there's just so many things as a founder. And even more so as a founder and not having co-founders, your own mental health and the mental health of your team is so important. So yeah, just kind of want to get your thoughts and kind of even your experience in terms of starting something with such a big vision. Like you said, like you have a really big vision and the need is so big. How do you kind of do that for your team and yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. Sorry, I'm like giggling word because my cat is doing a bit crazy here. Okay. Yeah, what I try to do as a founder, actually. So I'm actually part of a founder circle group here in Hong Kong as well, actually. And it's the founder who set that up has actually got a really inspiring vision to also encourage, founders to really support each other and their mental health on this journey. And I think it's so important. And actually, I realize the difference now before and after, because I think as a founder, if you don't have accountability, it's really easy to slip into bad patterns. And I think that's one way that, both of our programs of what you do at Flourish DX can also bring value by giving accountability from an external party to really keep you on track. So for me, like routine is critical. And I know me and you have talked about this before. So every morning I have like a routine that I do no matter what. And that just keeps me super grounded. And I also try to really separate like work and home life and have that separation time. So in the morning, I try to get at least 1 to 2 hours to myself just to be really silent and, also spend time praying and meditating and just really reflecting and having that quiet time. And even yesterday, someone inspired me sharing that, if you don't start your day the way you want it to continue, you're more likely to get to the end of the day and feel like you haven't achieved things. Versus when I have a great morning, I feel like I've already achieved so much throughout my day. But I've realized that mental health is not just in the big things, but also in the little things. And I think the hardest thing is to try and integrate it into day-to-day life. So even on an hourly, daily, weekly basis, trying to just take that time out, I think is actually more critical than the big things like taking a holiday. Yeah.
That is such a good tip. And especially now, right? We can't do the big things. I mean, like we can't kind of travel and those things were keeping a lot of people going. But I think what you've actually said is really, really wise in that it's in the little thing, because that's all we have left at the moment in terms of, first world, where we used to be able to travel and, look forward to these things. Because we don't have them anymore. It's kind of left a bit of a gaping hole. But it's actually, the approach and how we see and approach, even all the little things every day actually makes up our day. If you think about it, it's all the tiny things that we do that adds up to become a day. So yeah, that's very, very wise and interesting. And so even for the future of workplace mental health, and that can be for, the factory workers that you serve, what is your hope and future for this?
It's a good question. I mean, I imagine a future basically where my story goes full 360 and I can walk into any shop on the high street and see that, these products were made in an environment where the workers were able to express their challenges, or the whole supply chain was tracked for ethical, impact and verified. That's the future I really want to see. And I know that it's not about, eliminating every single problem out there. But I think tracking it and verifying it for me is going to change the world, because at that point we can all be a part of the story. And I really want to inspire people. The reason we've named the company Kno, as in KNO, is because we want people not just to see a product and be like, okay, that's sustainable, that's ethical, done, but to really think and want to know more and gain more knowledge about the people and the story, and to really have that fascination point. And I don't think it's up to every single one of us to, always find the time to do this. But I think if by default, every time you walk into a shop, the products are ethically sourced no matter what, like that for me is the only way forward. In fact, we don't really have a choice. So I think with what we're doing, it's just a matter of time really before this becomes reality. But hopefully through Kno Global and what we're doing, we can just make it happen at a quicker pace.
Yeah. That it's going to be an amazing day when that happens. And it's happening already in terms of so many, I'm sure your new clients and other people really caring about this issue. And you would hope that it doesn't take another factory to collapse and to, basically harm and kill a lot of people for, the world to wake up again and get back on the train. I think now, that's really what happens, right? A disaster happens, everyone's hot on the topic for a little while. And then after that, it's like, oh, that was 5 years ago, you've forgotten. But I love the fact that you're still on this, like this has impacted you so much, that kind of event, that how many years later, it must be a decade. It must be at least 10 years that has passed, and you're still really, really committed to making a difference in this place for the factory workers and that work environment. So I really, really admire what you're doing. And this actually, we were both on a call recently just to think about, how can we even with Flourish DX and with Kno Global work together, where we can really see workplaces, be a platform for thriving. So many times, especially when people's perception to work, it's like, oh, it's one of those things, but it's so crazy because you spend so many hours at work, majority of your time's at work. And so if we were to change that around for everyone from, the factory floor all the way to, the fancy corporate offices, and have that to be a place where people thrive and flourish. I'm super excited about the prospects of that.
Yeah, me too. I think we share such a common vision, and I just love the word flourish actually, because I think that also sets a very clear vision for what it is we want to achieve, right? Not even just, healthy workplaces, but beyond that, like workplaces that are flourishing, right? And yeah, health is part of that, and I think community is part of that. And I think, yeah, the more we can just create that by having solid examples, I think the more people can see what it looks like as well. So I think that's what entrepreneurship is about, and that's what gets me up every morning. The fact that we're actually creating it and it's real, and it's something that we can show. So yeah.
Yeah. And, for a lot of the guests that we have on this show, like I would love to get you back in 6 months' time or a year's time and just check in to see what's happened in between. Because the pace of change at the moment is insane. Like it just like the things and which is good and bad, great for progress, but also we have to, watch our own health, and that we're not, snowed under all the time and feeling that and feeling depleted by doing too many things. But with technology, with just being able to scale and with the demand as well, I've got a lot of hope for what you're doing and that hopefully in 6 months or 12 months time, you can come on and you're like, oh, we added this country, we're working with this brand. Yeah, so I'm definitely rooting for you at being one of the cheerleaders from the sidelines.
Oh, no, definitely. You're definitely a bigger part of it than on the sidelines, I'd say. I've really enjoyed connecting with you and also our group and the book club. And I think for me as a founder and for anyone who's starting a business or, got an idea or wanting to do something, like really surrounding yourself with community is so important and critical to even getting to your growth. The people who you decide to surround yourself with really influence you a lot. And I've been reflecting on this a lot, recently. And I think I'm only as great as the people, around me. And I feel more confident when I feel connected and in good community. So, yeah, I mean, thank you to you really as well for also creating this podcast and, generating community around this topic, because I think that way we can all encourage each other.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is like seriously one of the best parts of my job. Okay, I know the team's listening. I love the other parts too.
Yeah, of
But
course.
sorry.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love doing this kind of stuff too. Yeah.
It's just, I think that, I mean, the stories do matter and people matter. And this is why people stay at work, right? It's because of the community. There will be times where your work is really, really like draining, and it's stuff that you don't like to do. So my team, all my previous teams know that there's certain tasks I really, really dislike. But you get through it because of the community, because you actually want to do well for the people you work for, the people you work with, and report to you. It's like that sense of accountability, responsibility, but out of actually a place of, I know it sounds weird, but a place of love, that you
Yeah.
really, really genuinely like the people that you work with. And that's why people stay. That's why people stay at work. And now with employee retention being such a difficult thing, we really have to refocus in this area of just, yeah, being focused on people and community, because that's what, I stayed in my first job for 10 years because I literally loved my manager, my partner, and it was at a big four accounting firm. And to this day, I think about her and the impact that she's had on my life. And I hope that that's the case for a lot of people, that they get to experience that as well.
Wow, you're like the prime example of this actually, because this is exactly what we see in the factories as well. And I think this is often underappreciated. Like we assume that, especially for the factory workers, they're just chasing the money, right? Or they have no choice but to just choose the money. But there are so many cases, even in the factory, where the line managers are aware that unless the workers are friends with people on the line, they're just not going to stick around. And they're going to move to another factory where their friends are working, right? And the only reason is because we're all human. Like we're social beings by default, and we're going to choose a workplace based on the people. And yeah, this is actually where it goes back to cost for the factory. Labor turnover is one of the biggest costs. If you've got a high labor turnover and you're losing workers, not only are you using skills and quality, but you're also just losing that money on having to retrain people all the time, and the costs stack up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for the average factory. So it's about really equating that cost, I think, as well to the business. That if people aren't sticking around, it's really not worth, yeah, the time. So yeah, I'm really trying to also focus on that myself actually with the team right now, and really build a culture that supports people in wanting to stay longer
Mm.
term.
Yeah. And I love how, like what you said, I think somewhere through the podcast, just about, there's really not much differences. I think a lot of us from, office and all that, we think, oh, it's a whole different ball game or a whole different environment for factory workers, or people, who are doing manual labor jobs and, who are very different to what we traditionally, like, we automatically think of a workplace. But that example just right there shows exactly that we're all humans, and workplaces is still the same. So I really, yeah, I've learned so much, because I mean, I've never physically gone into a workshop where, if their factory workers making clothing, but thank you for just shedding the light on that and just like kind of humanizing it and just showing that, well, we're a lot more similar than we think. Yeah.
Yeah, we genuinely are. I genuinely think that, to some level, like all humans can relate to each other. And I think it's things like this, like our need for social connection, which just defines humans in so many ways. And I think the more we can actually, appreciate that, actually, the more you can also get out of, the working environment. And for factories, it means more productivity, like more products per hour, like higher quality, less returns. Like it literally comes down to this. And I think It's just the fact that this has never perhaps been measured in the factory context to this extent before. So it's about really trying to gather that data to prove these things, because, at the end of the day, the factory manager does have to care about, the fractions of a cent on each product to make his, salary for the workers. So we really do want to go down to that granular level. And yeah, I really miss visiting the factories actually during COVID. I haven't been able to. And yeah, it's just such an amazing environment, like so challenging on so many levels to be there and really try and appreciate all the things going on, both in the environment, but also with the people there. But yeah, you've got these huge communities of people, like thousands of workers in one place, which you wouldn't see in a lot of workplaces. So there's just so much opportunity to impact this whole area of mental health through just one employer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm so interested in this area, and I could literally spend hours just asking more questions. But we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna we're definitely gonna get you back one day again. So thank you so much for your time. I hope this has been really inspiring, especially in a season that everyone's buying potentially a lot of things, for loved ones, and it's Christmas coming up. That we're just a little bit more mindful or aware, and just feel that connection even to where all our products come from and the people behind them. So thank you so much, Marianne. It's been a real honor and pleasure to have having you on, and I hope that your cat settles in really well. I know it's day one.
About that. But yeah, thank you so much for having me and my cat on the show. We both really appreciated it. And hopefully he's an inspiration for mentally healthy workplaces too, helps calm everyone down.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe to the Mentally Healthy Workplaces Asia podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we have our LinkedIn page as well, and you can stay up to date with upcoming guests. You can also follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn if you like to see short clips of this conversation or others. And you'll find the video version of this podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do connect with myself on LinkedIn or with Marianne. And just stay in touch, and just wishing you a very, very safe, especially in light of the new strain, just to stay safe. And we'll see you at the next podcast. Thank you and take care.